The ablaze collapsed lights blazed bottomward on the television set as Alex Jones sat aloft from Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, his brand acuteness beaming through the awning like calefaction from a furnace. The set architecture itself seemed to amplify the confrontation. 2 chairs positioned a non-adverse anniversary added with no board barrier. Banishment the opponents into an affectionate battlefield area. Every facial announcement and activity would be abstract for millions of viewers. What was declared to be a simple political agitation was about to become the best atomic television moment of the year. The show's producers had accepted fireworks, but they had no abstraction. They were about to attest into complete annihilation that would be advised in advice classes for decades to come. Jones had no abstraction that the adolescent congresswoman sitting aloft from him had spent weeks advancing for this exact moment, armed with abstracts that would absolutely abort his believability in advance of millions of viewers. Welcome back to our appropriate political agitation segment. The host appear as cameras formed alive aloft the nation. Tonight, we accept cabal theorist and media personality Alex Jones adverse off a joined Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett from Texas. Jones leaned advanced in his chair, that accustomed beam overextension aloft his face. He bedeviled endless debates before application his loud articulation and advancing access to beat opponents. But Crockett sat calmly, a manila binder placed neatly on the table beside her, her eyes focused and determined. "Alex," she said quietly, her articulation acid through the collapsed tension. "I've been cat and mouse for this moment for an absolute connected time." Jones laughed, not acumen he was about to airing into the bigger allurement of his career. "Oh, really? Well, let me acquaint you something, Congresswoman. But before we dive into this absurd story, accomplish abiding you hit that subscribe button and amphitheater the notification alarm so you never absence these atomic political moments. Trust me, you won't appetite to absence what happens next. Allotment this video with anybody who needs to see what happens aback cabal theories accommodated cold, adamantine facts. The atmosphere in the collapsed was electric with tension. Camera operators zoomed in closer. Analysis they were about to abduction article historic. The assembly aggregation exchanged abashed glances. Alive they were witnessing a moment that would be replayed for years to come. Jones had absolved into this agitation a short edition accessible achievement over a politician. His accepted activity was simple. Beat opponents with rapid-fire accusations, affecting outbursts, and cabal theories that were absurd to actuality analysis in absolute time. He'd acclimated these access auspiciously for decades. Architecture a media ascendancy account millions by Axis political address into assisting entertainment. But Crockett wasn't aloof any politician. As a aloft civilian rights attorney, she'd spent years in courtrooms adverse bottomward able opponents who anticipation they could alarm her with advancing tactics. She knew absolutely how to handle men like Jones with patience, preparation, and a determined charge to authentic evidence. What Crockett pulled out of that binder didn't aloof betrayal Jones as a fraud. It absolutely dismantled years of his cabal theories with cold, adamantine affirmation that labored him agreeable and the absolute nation watching in shock. To accept the consequence of what was about to unfold, you charge to apperceive absolutely who these 2 bodies are and why this activity mattered so abundant to millions of Americans. For over 2 decades, Alex Jones had congenital an ascendancy on altercation and cabal theories. The 50-year-old media personality had millions of followers who abashed on his every word, assertive his claims about abstruse government plots, apocryphal banderole operations, and all-around conspiracies. His online belvedere generated millions in acquirement through supplement sales and merchandise, authoritative him one of the best financially acknowledged cabal theorists in America. Jones was accepted for his atomic temper, his adeptness to bark bottomward opponents, and his accomplishment at axis any agitation into anarchy that advantaged his narrative. He'd faced politicians before, usually acid them with rapid-fire accusations and affecting gestures that played able-bodied with his audience. His signature ashamed rants had become internet memes, but they were additionally able weapons adjoin extemporaneous opponents. His online ascendancy connected aloft assorted platforms, breeding acquirement through a circuitous arrangement of supplement sales, merchandise, book deals, and exceptional memberships. Jones had baffled the art of monetizing outrage, Axis political all-overs into a assisting business archetypal that had fabricated him affluent aloft best people's imagination. But Jones had a weakness he didn't alike apperceive about yet. His absolute career was congenital on lies that could be systematically dismantled by addition with the appropriate affirmation and the political accomplishment to present it effectively. At aloof 42 years old, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett had already accustomed herself as one of the best appalling debaters in Congress. A aloft civilian rights apostle from Dallas, she'd congenital her career on authentic alertness and adverse cross-examinations that labored opponents speechless. Crockett wasn't aloof edition babykisser attractive for a viral moment. She'd spent her acknowledged career demography bottomward able men who anticipation they could alarm her with loud choir and advancing tactics. She knew absolutely how to handle bullies like Jones with facts, evidence, and the affectionate of calm absorption that fabricated their theatrics attending antic by comparison. Her alertness for this agitation had been methodical and exhaustive. She'd spent weeks allegory Jones's accomplished statements, cross-referencing his claims with authentic evidence, and acclimation her abstracts for best impact. Her acknowledged aggregation had helped her ahead his acceptable responses and adapt counterarguments for every accessible bend he ability attempt. Added importantly, Crockett had been abandoned afflicted by Jones's cabal theories. Several of her capacity had been addled by Jones's followers afterwards he'd advance apocryphal advice about their community. She'd accustomed buzz calls from aged voters who were abashed to leave their homes because online cabal theorists had targeted their adjacency based on Jones's apocryphal claims. Adolescent parents in her commune had been affected to change schools for their accouchement afterwards actuality doxed by Jones's admirers members. This wasn't aloof political amphitheater for her. It was acutely personal. She'd apparent actual how Jones's lies translated into absolute apple harassment, threats, and abhorrence for accustomed Americans who aloof capital to alive their lives in peace. This agitation represented article abundant bigger than aloof two bodies arguing on television. It was an activity amid the cabal access movement that had berserk American political address and the acceptable ethics of evidence-based democracy. Jones represented the alarming trend of access lies into assisting entertainment. Regardless of the absolute apple abuse it acquired to innocent people, his followers had committed acts of violence, harassment, and browbeating based on his apocryphal claims. Crockett represented the activity to restore acumen to American backroom application, the accoutrement of affirmation and argumentation to adverse the anarchy of cabal theories. The champ of this agitation wouldn't aloof account political points. They would access how millions of Americans beheld accuracy itself in an era of boundless misinformation. Parents aloft the country were watching, acquisitive to see addition assuredly ascendancy cabal theorists answerable for the accident they acquired to communities and families. Teachers who had been disturbing to advice acceptance analyze amid reliable sources and cabal websites were affability in, acquisitive to see evidence-based acumen celebration over affecting manipulation. Amusing media admiral were watching nervously, alive that the after effect could access approaching discussions about Belvedere albatross and agreeable moderation. Law administration admiral were additionally advantageous absorption as abounding of them had dealt with the real-world after-effects of cabal theories from aggravation campaigns to absolute abandon committed by bodies who believed apocryphal advice advanced by personalities like Jones. As the agitation acutely began, Jones anon went into his signature advance mode. Aptitude advanced aggressively and pointing his feel at Crockett like he was administering an orchestra of chaos. "Let me acquaint you something, Congresswoman," Jones began, his articulation already assent to that accustomed shout. "You and your affair accept been accusation the bigger cabal theories in American history. You affirmation there's some affectionate of abstruse cabal amid affectionate Americans who aloof appetite to save their country." The collapsed admirers abounding with both Jones supporters and Crockett allies anon began active with tension. Jones had opened with his accepted tactic allege his opponents of the absolute affair he was accusable of. His articulation agitated that accustomed bend of bogus abuse that had fabricated him millions over the years. "You allocution about misinformation," Jones continued, now continuing up and pacing abaft his armchair like a bound animal. "Your affair has been overextension lies about acclamation integrity, about affectionate Americans, about everything. And now you appetite to sit actuality and address me about truth. You've been allotment of the enactment apparatus that's been lying to Americans for decades." The cameras captured every affecting activity as Jones coiled his accoutrements theatrically, amphitheater to his admirers with the aforementioned performative acrimony that had congenital his media empire. Crockett remained altogether calm, watching Jones accomplish his affected accepted with the accommodating announcement of addition who'd apparent this exact appearance before. She fabricated a few addendum on an acknowledged pad, occasionally casual at the manila binder beside her. "Are you accomplished with your aperture statement, Mr. Jones?" she asked aback. He assuredly paused for breath. Jones laughed loudly, amphitheater to his supporters in the audience. "Oh, I'm aloof accepting started, sweetheart. You politicians anticipate you can alarm absolute Americans with your adorned titles and your base system, but we see appropriate through you. Sweetheart, Crockett aloft an eyebrow, her acknowledged training a non-audition the arrogant tone. Mr. Jones, I'm a sitting affiliate of Congress and a practicing attorney. I anticipate we can advance able address here. But Jones was already effective into his additional beachcomber of attacks, affairs out his buzz and bouncing it dramatically. Able courtesy. You appetite to allocution about able address while your affair tries to black out absolute media? While you advance the aboriginal alteration rights of absolute journalists, the restriction in the collapsed was architecture rapidly. Jones's supporters were auspicious his achievement while Crockett's allies watched nervously, apprehensive if she could handle his advancing tactics. Jones connected his exact assault. I've been advertisement government bribery for over 20 years. While you've been what? Sitting in some air-conditioned appointment in Dallas. I've risked aggregate to accompany accuracy to the American people. Truth. Crockett assuredly spoke, her articulation acid through Jones's theatrics like a knife through butter. Mr. Jones, aback you brought up truth. I anticipate it's time we had an honest chat about your accord with that concept. For the aboriginal time aback the agitation began, Jones seemed hardly taken back. There was article in Crockett's tone, a aplomb that appropriate she wasn't aloof planning to barter accusation with him. Oh, actuality we go, Jones said, aggravating to achieve his momentum. Addition babykisser about to address me about accuracy while she covers up for the absolute conspiracy's accident in Washington. Actually, Crockett said, aperture her manila binder for the aboriginal time. I'm activity to do article different. I'm activity to appearance you and anybody watching absolutely what your adaptation of accuracy absolutely looks like. The collapsed fell silent. Alike Jones' chock-full pacing, analysis that article had afflicted in the activating of the debate. You see, Mr. Jones, Crockett continued, affairs out the aboriginal certificate from her folder. While you've been active shouting about conspiracies and affairs supplements to your followers, I've been accomplishing article you've allegedly never tried, absolute research. Jones approved to interrupt, but Crockett's calm ascendancy allowable the room's absorption in a way his theatrics never could. She had the attendance of Addition who had spent years in courtrooms area facts mattered added than volume. I accept actuality authentic affirmation of 17 specific claims you've fabricated over the accomplished 2 years, she said, captivation up a blubbery assemblage of affidavit with color-coded tabs and accent sections. Claims that accept been again and thoroughly debunked by assorted absolute sources. Claims that accept acquired absolute abuse to absolute bodies in communities aloft America. The admirers was now absolutely focused on Crockett, alike Jones's best loyal supporters' aptitude advanced to see what damaging affirmation she was about to present. But added importantly, Crockett continued, I accept affirmation that you knew these claims were apocryphal aback you fabricated them. Centralized communications, banking records, and affidavit from your own agents that prove you've been advisedly lying to your admirers for profit. Jones's face began to wring, his affected aplomb starting to crack. That's absolutely false. You can't aloof accomplish accusations afterwards proof. Oh, Mr. Jones. Crockett smiled slightly. I would never accomplish accusations afterwards proof. That's the aberration amid us. She pulled out her additional assemblage of documents, this one alike thicker than the first. Shall we alpha with your claims about the elementary academy incident? The one area you spent years cogent your admirers it was a hoax causing the families to be addled and threatened. The collapsed was now asleep silent. This was the moment anybody had been cat and mouse for aback Jones's best arguable cabal access would assuredly be advised beneath the acrid ablaze of evidence. Jones approved to achieve control, shouting, You can't ambuscade me without of ambience documents. This is a setup. This is absolutely the affectionate of base access we apprehend from the establishment. But his protests were falling flat. The admirers could see that Crockett wasn't ambushing him. She was absolutely presenting affirmation in absolutely the way her accomplished apostle would present a case to a jury. Her articulation remained abiding and professional, creating an abrupt adverse with Jones's added atrocious attempts to achieve ascendancy of the narrative. The television cameras captured every detail of the exchange. Close-up shots showed the diaphoresis alpha to anatomy on Jones's forehead as he accomplished his accepted access weren't working. Wide shots appear the anatomy accent of both participants. Crockett sitting cocked and composed, her abstracts neatly organized, while Jones fidgeted nervously and kept casual about the collapsed as if attractive for an escape route. Mr. Jones, Crockett said, her articulation actual calm acceptance Jones's added agitated attempts to derail the conversation. These aren't out-of-context documents. These are your own words, your own communications, your own banking records, and they acquaint an absolute bright adventure about a man who congenital or assisting business on the adversity of innocent families. The accretion was extensive its peak. Jones was acceptable added agitated by the second. His face bloom red as he accomplished that his accepted access weren't working. He kept casual at his buzz as if assured his aggregation to somehow accomplishment him from the methodical abolition Crockett was building. His supporters in the admirers were alpha to about-face uncomfortably in their seats. They'd appear assured to see their hero annihilate edition Babykisser with his brand advancing style. Instead, they were watching him get systematically outmaneuvered by edition who had acutely done her homework. Crockett remained in complete control, absolutely architecture her case like the accomplished apostle she was. She knew that the best adverse affirmation was yet to come, and she was pacing her revelations altogether for best impact. What happened to Butting was the best adverse appraisal in avant-garde political agitation history. Crockett didn't aloof advance Jones's credibility. She systematically destroyed it with the absorption of a surgeon removing a tumor. "Let's alpha with the facts, Mr. Jones," Crockett said. "Affairs out the Aboriginal certificate and captivation it up for the cameras. This is in centralized email from your assembly staff, anachronous 3 months afterwards the Elementary Academy tragedy, discussing how to advance admirers' assurance with the story, alike acceptance the official anecdotal appears to be accurate." Jones's eyes widened as he accustomed the document. "Area, did you get that? That's clandestine communication. That's apparently illegal. Actually, Mr. Jones, this was allotment of the analysis activity in the civilian lawsuits filed to join you. All altogether acknowledged and acquired through able acknowledged channels." Crockett's acknowledged accomplishments was assuming as she calmly explained the antecedent of her evidence. She connected account from the email. Quote, "Alex knows the families are real, but the admirers doesn't appetite to apprehend that. We charge to accumulate the cabal bend activity for ratings." End quote. This is your own producer, Mr. Jones. Acceptance that you knew the truth, but chose to lie anyhow for banking gain. The collapsed admirers gasped audibly. Several bodies in the advanced row covered their mouths in shock. Alike Jones's best committed supporters seemed abashed by the adumbration that their hero had been advisedly artful them. The moral implications were staggering. Actuality was authentic affidavit that Jones had advisedly profited from overextension lies about a civic tragedy. Jones approved to recover, continuing up and pointing at Crockett. "That's taken out of context. You're aging my words. This is absolutely what the abysmal accompaniment does. They booty clandestine communications and use them to abort accuracy tellers." But Crockett was aloof accepting started. She pulled out edition document, this one with banking abstracts acutely visible. "Actuality are your acquirement letters for the aforementioned period," she said, her articulation abiding and professional. "Your supplement sales added by 340% during the months you were announcement the Elementary Academy cabal theory. Your admirers' donations went up by 280%. You fabricated over $1.20 acta in accumulation anon from overextension lies about murdered children." The numbers hit the collapse like a bomb. The moral implications were staggering. Jones had profited awfully from the affliction of afflicted families. Jones was now visibly sweating, his accepted aplomb absolutely shattered. "You can't. That's not. The acquirement numbers are coincidental. Bodies abutment absolute media because they appetite the truth. Because they appetite the truth. The truth." Crockett's articulation agitated a adumbration of acrimony for the Aboriginal time. "Mr. Jones, here's edition email from your staff. This one discusses how to acknowledge a back admirers associates started allurement questions about the inconsistencies in your cabal theory." She apprehended anon from the document. Quote, "When bodies ask for evidence, alter to affecting arguments about government overreach. Don't appoint. With specific absolute claims because they don't abutment our narrative." End quote. The admirers was now absolutely silent, arresting the adverse adumbration that Jones's operation was advisedly advised to abstain absolute scrutiny. But Crockett wasn't finished. She had adored the best damaging affirmation for last. "Mr. Jones, do you bethink accepting a chat with your arch researcher 2 years ago about the Elementary Academy families?" Jones's face went pale. "I don't apperceive what you're talking about." Crockett pulled out a final document, an archetype of a recorded buzz call. "This is an archetype of a buzz chat amid you and your researcher discussing how to handle the assent affirmation that your cabal access was false." She began account in a clear, abiding voice. "Jones, I apperceive the families are real, But we've gone too far to back bottomward now. If we accept we were amiss about this, our accomplished believability is shot. Researcher. But Alex, some of these families are accepting afterlife threats from our audience. Jones, that's not our responsibility. Our job is to ask questions, not to administer how bodies react. The collapse erupted. The moral implications of the recorded chat were overwhelming. Jones had accepted his lies were causing absolute abuse to innocent bodies and had called to abide anyway. Jones exploded in fury, his face red and veins billowing in his neck. That's actionable recording. That's a setup. This is absolutely what the globalists do. They access organizations and actualize affected evidence. But his protest's articulate, atrocious, and unhinged compared to Crockett's calm presentation of authentic facts. Mr. Jones, Crockett said, her articulation now accustomed the abounding ascendancy of her acknowledged training. This recording was fabricated by your own employee, who came advanced aback he could no best abide actuality allotment of an operation that was harming innocent families. He provided this affirmation voluntarily to the civilian attorney's apiary the families you defamed. She paused. Absolution the weight of the affirmation achieve over the studio. But let me ask you directly, Mr. Jones, alive what you apperceive now, alive that absolute families absent absolute children, alive that your admirers has addled and threatened these afflicted parents based on your lies, do you accept annihilation to say to those families? This was the moment of truth. Jones could accept taken responsibility, apologized, and approved to deliver some address from the situation. Instead, he chose to bifold bottomward in the best amazing way possible. I'm not answer for allurement questions, Jones screamed, his articulation alveolate through the studio. That's what journalists do. We ask questions, and if bodies can't handle questions, maybe they're ambuscade something. The admirers recoiled from his shouting. Afterwards, Crockett's calm, evidence-based presentation. Jones's affecting access looked absolutely like what it was, the atrocious acknowledgement of a man whose lies had been exposed. The absolute conspiracy, Jones continued, now absolutely out of control. Is politicians like you aggravating to black out absolute media? You're the ones lying to the American people. Crockett watched his accident with the calm announcement of an apostle who had aloof watched a accusable actor allege himself on the attestant stand. Mr. Jones, she said quietly, you're not a journalist. You're an agent who apparent that abhorrence and acrimony are assisting commodities. You've congenital an ascendancy on the adversity of others, and a back confronted with affirmation of the abuse you've caused. Your acknowledgement is to bark louder and accusation anybody else. She aggregate her abstracts and looked anon into the camera. America deserves bigger than this. We deserve media personalities who account truth, who booty albatross for their mistakes, and who put the abundance of innocent bodies aloft their own accumulation margins. Jones was still shouting, but the accident was done. His believability lay in ruins, destroyed by his own words and his own reactions to actuality confronted with the truth. The host approved to achieve ascendancy of the program, but it was bright that article aberrant had aloof happened. A cabal theorist had been absolutely apparent and dismantled on a live television application annihilation, but authentic affirmation and able acknowledged technique. The actual aftereffects of Crockett's analytical abolition of Alex Jones was clashing annihilation apparent in avant-garde political media. Oral account of the agitation ending, amusing media platforms exploded with acknowledgement videos, memes, and annotation from aloft the political spectrum. Afore Jones had alike lauded the collapsed building, clips of his accident were already activity viral. The hashtag Dying Crockett Destroys Jones began trending nationally. Oral 30 account with over 100,000 posts in the Aboriginal hour alone. The best aggregate blow was a 30-second accumulation assuming Crockett calmly account from Jones's own centralized communications while he screamed and gesticulated aimlessly in the background. The beheld adverse was devastating. A composed able presenting affirmation while a developed man threw her accessible tantrum. Jasmine Crockett aloof gave a masterclass in how to handle cabal theorists, wrote one viral cheap with over 200,000 likes. She didn't shout, didn't interrupt, aloof presented facts. This is what happens aback you accompany a lawyer's alertness to a propagandist's atmosphere tantrum. Memes abounding amusing media platforms. One accepted angel showed Crockett with her assemblage of abstracts labeled facts, sitting aloft from Jones with a megaphone labeled feelings. Addition showed Jones agreeable with the caption, when you apprehend your own emails apparent your lies, the yo. Banking implications were actual and astringent for Jones. Oral hours of the debate, above sponsors began affairs their advertisements from his platform. 3 acquittal processes appear they were reviewing their relationships with his business. His online supplement sales, which had been his primary acquirement source, alone by over 60% in the Aboriginal anniversary afterward the debate. The political establishment's acknowledgement was abrupt and abundantly anticipated Fourth Affair lines, but with some hasty crossover address for Crockett's performance. Democratic leaders accepted Crockett's methodical access to debunking cabal theories. "This is how you adverse misinformation," tweeted the House Democratic leadership. Not with shouting matches, but with authentic affirmation and able presentation. Added surprisingly, several Republican politicians additionally accepted Crockett's performance, acceptance they were accurate to anatomy it in agreement of acknowledging accuracy over cabal theories rather than accessory politics. Regardless of affair affiliation, we should all be able to accede that profiting from the affliction of afflicted families is wrong, wrote one abstinent Republican senator. Congresswoman Crockett presented her case professionally and effectively. Bourgeois media personalities were breech in their reactions. Some approved to avert Jones by claiming the agitation was a bureaucracy or that Crockett had acclimated arbitrary tactics. But others distanced themselves from Jones, acquainted that his complete accident had fabricated him or accountability to the broader bourgeois movement. "I've disagreed with Congresswoman Crockett on activity issues," wrote one arresting bourgeois commentator. "But you accept to account how thoroughly she able for this debate. She brought receipts, and Jones brought screaming." Perhaps best significantly, Crockett's accessible presentation of affirmation from Jones's centralized communications had above acknowledged implications for advancing civilian cases adjoin him. Acknowledged experts acclaimed that Jones's acknowledgement to the evidence, decidedly his shouting denial, followed by his acceptance that he asks questions rather than letters facts, could be acclimated adjoin him in court. Abaka acta has her accessible accident in acknowledgement to affirmation actuality presented adjoin him. That's usually not accessible to his acknowledged position, explained one civilian activity apostle who had been afterward Jones's cases. The families who had been advancing civilian activity adjoined Jones issued a collective account praising Crockett's presentation. Congresswoman Crockett showed the nation what we've been adage in cloister for years. Alex Jones knew he was lying, profited from those lies, and showed no anguish for the abuse he acquired to our families. Several new civilian cases were filed adjoin Jones in the weeks afterward the debate, with attorneys' citation his accessible statements during the activity with Crockett as affirmation of his accompaniment of apperception and intent. Aloft the actual political and acknowledged implications, the agitation represented a cogent cultural moment in the advancing activity adjoin misinformation and cabal theories. Educational institutions began application clips from the agitation as teaching accoutrement for media articulacy courses. "This is an absolute archetype of how to appraise sources and evidence," explained one media studies professor. Crockett approved the aberration amid assessment and authentic fact, amid affecting abetment and analytic argumentation. Psychology advisors began allegory the agitation as a case abstraction in how cabal theorists acknowledge a back confronted with accurate evidence. The adverse amid Crockett's abstinent responses and Jones's added agitated denials became an arbiter archetype of rational adjoin aberrant address in aerial burden situations. Journalism schools began accumulation Crockett's methodical, evidence-based access into their curricula as an archetype of able analytic presentation. The agitation additionally sparked broader conversations about the albatross of media platforms to advisor and adapt cabal agreeable that could account absolute apple harm. Tech Admiral begin themselves beneath added burden to explain how their algorithms had helped amplify Jones's apocryphal agreeable to millions of users. Aldermanic hearings were appointed to appraise the role of amusing media platforms in overextension misinformation. Several above platforms appear new behavior accurately advised to anticipate the affectionate of assisting cabal agreeable that Jones had pioneered. Announcement standards organizations began developing new guidelines to anticipate accepted businesses from a back allotment adverse misinformation through programmatic advertising. In the weeks afterward the debate, Jones attempted several strategies to balance from the adverse accident of credibility. First, he approved to affirmation that the absolute agitation had been a bureaucracy orchestrated by political enemies. However, this anecdotal fell collapsed aback it became bright that all the affirmation Crockett had presented was already allotment of the accessible almanac through acknowledged proceedings. Next, he attempted to access to advancing Crockett personally, analytic her motives and credentials. This activity additionally backfired as it alone served to admonish bodies of his amateurish behavior during the debate. Finally, Jones approved to reframe the activity as affidavit of a broader cabal adjoin absolute media. However, His own recorded words acceptance that he knew the accuracy but chose to lie anyhow fabricated this anecdotal absurd to sustain. His admirers' numbers connected to abatement steadily in the months afterward the debate, abounding of his aloft supporters bidding disillusionment, not aloof with his specific lies, but with his disability to booty albatross aback confronted with evidence. Online forums that had already been abounding with Jones supporters began Axis Analytical with longtime followers analytic aggregate they had believed. I accurate Alex for years because I anticipation he was angry for truth, wrote one aloft addict in a broadly aggregate amusing media column that garnered over 50,000 likes. But watching him scream at Congresswoman Crockett instead of acclamation the affirmation she presented, that's not what accuracy seekers do. That's what accusable bodies do aback they are caught. For Crockett, the agitation achievement decidedly aloft her civic contour and accustomed her as a arch articulation in the activity adjoin misinformation. She was arrived to allege at law schools about able advancement techniques. Media organizations approved her annotation on how to adverse cabal theories with evidence-based arguments. Best importantly, her access became archetypal for added politicians' adverse agnate confrontations with cabal theorists and misinformation spreaders. Congresswoman Crockett showed us that you don't activity lies with louder lies, explained one political strategist. You activity lies with authentic accuracy presented professionally and systematically. Her appointment appear cogent access in speaking requests and media appearances. But Crockett was accurate to use her animated belvedere to advance evidence-based political address rather than claimed arrondissement. The Jones-Crockett agitation became a watershed moment in American political discourse, apria axis point in how cabal theories are confronted in accessible forums. Afore the debate, abounding politicians and media abstracts had approved to adverse cabal theorists by shouting aback or agreeable in articulate combat. Crockett's methodical, evidence-based access accepted far added able and provided a arrangement for approaching confrontations. The agitation additionally approved the ability of absolute alertness and able presentation in an era of political theater. While Jones relied on effect and volume, Crockett's calm presentation of authentic facts accepted far added actuating to viewers. Perhaps best importantly, the activity showed that cabal theorists could be finer challenged to back their own words and accomplishments were acclamated as affirmation adjoin them. In the months afterward the debate, political commentators began apropos to the Crockett standard, the apprehension that austere political abstracts should be able to abutment their claims with authentic affirmation rather than affecting appeals or claimed attacks. The agitation became appropriate examination in abounding political science and communications courses as an archetype of able accessible advancement and the accent of alertness in political confrontations. 6 months afterwards the debate, in a quiet moment during an aldermanic hearing, a aide asked Crockett what she had abstruse from the acquaintance of so thoroughly dismantling or arresting cabal theorist on a live television. I abstruse that accuracy is its own best advocate, she replied. You don't charge to back or accomplish or attack. You aloof charge to do your homework, present the facts clearly, and let bodies draw their own conclusions. The Jones-Crockett agitation accepted that in an era of misinformation and cabal theories, the best able weapon charcoal what it has consistently been, anxiously researched, authentic accuracy presented by addition who has done their homework. And for millions of Americans who watched a sitting congresswoman systematically annihilate a cabal theorist application annihilation, but his own words and able presentation skills. It was an admonition that truth, aback appropriately presented, is absolutely its own best advocate. The nation had witnessed what happens aback alertness meets desperation, aback affirmation confronts emotion, and aback able adequacy faces off a join assisting deception. The after effect wasn't alike close, and it provided a alley map for how to handle cabal theories in an age aback accuracy itself had become a political battleground. If you begin this absurd political showdown as alluring as we did, accomplish abiding you hit that like button and subscribe to never absence these atomic moments that ascertain American politics. Amphitheater that notification alarm and allotment this video with anyone who needs to see what happens aback alertness meets agony in the political arena. And let us apperceive in the comments what did you anticipate of Congresswoman Crockett's strategy. Was this the best able appraisal of a cabal theorist you've anytime seen? Do you anticipate this agitation will change how politicians handle misinformation in the future? We appetite to apprehend your thoughts on this celebrated debate. What added cabal theorists do you anticipate charged to face this affectionate of evidence-based confrontation? Drop your suggestions in the comments below, and don't balloon to analysis out our added videos allegory the best atomic political moments in American history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the abutting video.